Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here. I knew when I started this podcast, I wanted all of you to get to know the women behind the titles. So I always ask my guests the question, when did you first fall in love with sports? Now I know that not everyone's going to be a lifelong sports fan, but what I know for sure is if they didn't love it then, they definitely love it now. And that goes for my next guest, Ashley Clinkscale, the Senior Vice President of Communications, Community, and Diversity for the Portland Trailblazers. Ashley fell in love with communications, and she found her niche in sports. She loves the storytelling behind sports. And y'all, Ashley is about to share her incredible journey with us. This powerhouse went from a director to SVP in the middle of a global pandemic. Okay, let me break this down for you. Making the jump from director to SVP is no easy task. Let's add another layer. She went from the Oklahoma City Thunder, where she was a director, to the Portland Trailblazers, where she was recruited to be the SVP, had to pick up, move across the country. Oh wait, she was newly married, and basketball had just come to a screeching halt because of the pandemic. That's a lot. But listen, Ashley did it all with grace. I can't wait for you to listen in as Ashley takes you through her journey and shares incredible advice that will certainly help you on your next move. All right, ladies, let's dive in. Ashley, thank you and welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. We are so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So before we dive into your impressive career, I've been doing my homework. I'm very impressed. Take us back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
I wouldn't necessarily say I've fallen in love with sports.
Oh, I've been waiting for one of these.
I haven't. I've been around sports all my life. I have brothers, my nephews, my husband are avid sports fans. But communications and my passion for the work I do led me to the sports industry, and I really found my niche in sports and went from there. So I can't say that I'm an avid sports fan. I enjoy it. I watch it. Professional basketball is definitely my number one. My husband is a Florida State graduate, so I've started to become a college football fan in that space. But yeah, nothing led me to really fall into sports. I fell in love with my passion and my career for communications.
Yes. Okay. I've been waiting. I was like, someone's going to have a different answer for me one day.
I'm your girl.
Yes, you are. But you said you found your niche working in sports. Talk a little bit more about that.
I think it was an opportunity to really control a narrative and tell a positive story. Was really I started off in minor league baseball. Single A affiliate, Boston Red Sox with the Greenville Drive is really when I heavily got into sports. And so then going into golf, where I told the stories of more women and more diversity in the game of golf and more women and having access to golf courses. And then getting into the NBA, who has a global and international presence and platform. And as you see, as of late, we're leading the charge in a racial injustice space. And that's where I said, there's just some unique storytelling and a great organization and brand to be affiliated with from a comms perspective.
Yes, you have such a unique title, a long title, but a unique title.
Right.
Tell everybody what you do and who you do it for.
Sure. So I lead communications, corporate communications as the senior vice president for the Portland Trailblazers. And I also lead our diversity, equity, and inclusion. So from a communications perspective, I tell our stories off of the court. So most people affiliated with, in-game and day-to-day with players. I get to tell the cool stories of what the players are doing in the community. So from our racial injustice initiative and our statements that we're putting out and what our players are doing in the community, I get to work with them on that narrative. I also get to tell our business story and objectives from our leadership and experts in the space that keep this well-oiled machine going every day. And I also lead our diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, which the Trailblazers have done a phenomenal job for the last 3 years in this space. And I've been able to come on and really have the ear of our CEO, Chris McGowan, who is committed to our work in this space, which you really don't see in a number of organizations where it's just a staff of one. That's kind of everything that's under my umbrella right now and what I do on a day-to-day basis. So leading the strategy for both ends of communications as well as diversity.
You have a big job.
I do, but you know what? I enjoy it and I'm passionate about what I do. I can say that.
Good. I can feel it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your career path. Your previous job was with Oklahoma City Thunder, and you were the director of corporate communications. And then you came over to Portland and you are a senior vice president. So first of all, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What a jump. So if women are sitting here listening and thinking, wow, she went from director to SVP. I mean, it speaks volumes to your talents, first of all, right?
Thank you.
Tell us, what was the hardest part about making that jump?
The hardest part was leaving the Oklahoma City Thunder. Although they're the baby of the league, I worked with a phenomenal group of leaders and experts in the industry. And I just thoroughly enjoy the people in the organization. What I will say, I was not looking, and so what I say to those is do the work. The opportunities will absolutely come to you. I was not looking. It was a very tough decision. But transparently, as a woman of color in sports, I had the opportunity to go to a very innovative and iconic organization that's the Trailblazers. It's been around for 50 years. This year, we just celebrated 50 years. So there was an opportunity to come in to an organization under, the leadership of Chris McGowan, who started out in sales and again worked his way to the top, and just to bring a different kind of lens and approach to the organization. A lot of prayers, a lot of, conversations with my husband and my family and my tribe, my peers in the sports industry. But what I would say to those is do the work and don't let it be frowned upon when you leave for another opportunity. Don't.
Say more about that. Say more about that.
Some people will look at it, oh, well, you were only at the Thunder for 2 seasons, but I did the work while I was at the Thunder. I was committed. I made change. We announced our jersey patch. We were the last team in the organization to announce our jersey patch. We launched a diversity, inclusion group. And there was a number of major wins that I had there. And the Trailblazers sought me out. And it was a long conversation, but, don't let your tenure somewhere hold you down. Your work will create a path for you. And I can say that was my experience, and don't have any regrets. My parents came from an era where you stay with an organization. My dad was with General Electric for 35 years. You don't see that anymore. Our world is ever changing, and just trust in your path and do the work, and it'll come.
So our experiences are a little different, right? So from my last job when I was with the Cubs, I sought them out, right? There was no job posting. So I had to get creative, but it worked. But for you, Portland came after you. What do you think that was, right? I know you were doing the work and you're clearly talented, but how did they know about you?
That's a great question. I think, building those relationships and being in the right place at the right time. But I'm also a person, I'm not a fan of the term networking. To me, it feels disingenuous. It feels forced. I think for me, one tool that I've always done is if I'm in a room, if I'm at a conference, if there's a one person I want to connect with, I make sure I'm up to speed on everything about this person. And it's not me approaching this person and tell them about myself. It's for me to go and engage in conversation with this person and, learn more about them. If it's a recent article they've written, if it's a media person, I've just never been in the business of let me go hand out cards and introduce myself. Some of that just happens organic. And I apparently impressed some people in the right rooms and they sought after me.
Yes, I love that. I always say, I was like, networking is such a bad word. I got to change it. Like everybody, it makes people nervous and they feel icky and uncomfortable. And what you just said is like through the lens of learning. Like you just want to learn about someone else. And then naturally they want to learn about you too. And then it just becomes a conversation. And then if there's a, professional chemistry there, you end up continuing to talk and maintaining and nurturing those relationships.
Absolutely.
I'm glad to hear that because I say it all the time and I think people are sick of hearing me say it.
No, it's very true and very important.
So I'm going to be nosy a little bit. What were you most nervous about making the move from a director to an SVP?
I don't know. I would say nervous. It was preparing for the challenge because I knew it was a challenge. And I just wanted to make sure that what the organization saw in me, that I came in and I went over and beyond and delivered while being true and authentic to myself, which as a comms professional, I am. So I wouldn't say nervous. I prepared myself for the challenge that I knew that was before me, especially in the current climate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I hear you saying is not so much nerves, but it sounds like because you were prepared. You prepared yourself. Mm-hmm. You knew it was going to be a challenge and you were ready.
Right. As you were aware, sports industry front office, they're not diverse groups. They are of a certain age and gender. And coming into that environment, even a corporate environment as a woman of color, you come in expecting in some instances to have to bear a burden, right? Mm-hmm. But also with certain expectations that need to be delivered at a different level. And so I came in prepared for the challenge and to do the work.
Will you give us a sneak peek into like how you got prepared? Like what mindset, like what were you working on?
I think for me, I'm a strategist, so I have a plan for a plan for another plan. That's just unfortunate. That's how I live. There's a plan for my other plan. I proactively, did my research on the Trailblazers and some of their communication and what they were doing, here locally in the market, learning about the market. We have Nike and Under Armour and Adidas in our backyard and how we've partnered and really had a united front together across the board and how we could create that synergy. Working with our team, as you see, we have very vocal players, which is phenomenal, but also how we can work hand in hand with our social team. Really studied our social media presence because, and I'm going to age myself, when I got into PR, we were faxing press releases, and now we're in a space of, right? We're in a space of, people controlling their narratives on their social channels, on Twitter, on others. So how do we kind of hone in this communication and really work with our players as a part of the brand to make sure our narrative is consistent and cohesive?
All right. Preparation and strategy for your strategy is what I'm doing.
I do. Plan for a plan.
Yes, I do the same. And I think it drives my husband insane.
Oh, it drives my husband insane. Insane. I'm planning vacations for next year and he's like, we're in the middle of COVID, but I'm like, no. No, vacation is very important. Yes.
Doesn't even matter if it's a staycation, whatever it is, it's important.
Something.
Yes. And if you don't plan for it, it's not going to happen. Let's be honest.
Exactly. Right.
Same in my household.
Yes.
So you just started I can't believe it's already September, but you started in April. And so you're fresh off the negotiating and accepting an offer. What's one piece of advice you would give to women in sports when it comes to that pivotal moment of getting an offer, and what do you do from there?
I think knowing your worth and doing your research in the markets that you're moving to, seeing what those competitive wages are, having those transparent conversations. And really it's, I want to be careful on, don't just go back and say, oh, I deserve more money. Show your work and your experience and the success and the return on investment that you brought in previous roles. And those things will speak for themselves. Just the tactical work that you've done that's created success for brands and organizations will then, when it comes for negotiation and compensation conversations, will really move the needle. Just bring your data, bring your facts to the table. That's very, very important in those conversations. And you don't have to immediately respond. If you need 24, you do not have to immediately respond. You take your time and sit and live with it and then go back and have those conversations. I can say even the younger Ashley, you get a job offer, you get excited and you run for it. But now you have to look at it from a personal and a professional space. And you want to work with a person, a boss, or organization that understands and respects that. You see a lot of people hiring now for diversity teams. It was important to me as a person of color leading this space that we're going to do the work and we're going to do, it right. And so having leadership that really listens and understands and appreciates and educates themselves and not comes to you to be educated is important.
Yes.
Yes. And we have that again in Chris McGowan and leadership, and something that, really drew me to coming to the Trailblazers.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, Jahaan here. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I am sure you are thinking about your own career right now and how you can pull out in front of the pack to take your career to the next level. For 18 years, supporting women in sports has been my favorite part of my career. And I would love to support you, whether it's joining my free Game of Her Own community or one of my one-on-one coaching programs. I am here for you. Send me a message at jblake@jahaanblake.com or DM me on Instagram @jahaanblake. And let's schedule a time to have a free session. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right, let's get back to why you're here. Okay, so thinking about when you moved, April, in the middle of COVID.
Middle of COVID, part of it.
I mean, coming in, new big role, new big challenges. How did you deal with all of that?
It was a major transition. And just to give you context, I was with the Thunder the night that the NBA came to a stop.
Ooh.
So I was working that game, major, as you can imagine, PR crisis. What do we do? This has never happened before. How do we communicate this? I could say I left in the middle of a pandemic with a bang. So I unfortunately, left, and I didn't get to say goodbye to my colleagues and my peers. And my husband and I found a place to live amidst the COVID and finding a house and moved cross country. And I started a job where I still to this day have only met my colleagues over Zoom. So it is, I have not met anyone in person. So to even professionally, I think there's so many layers of moving and relocating and starting a new job amidst the pandemic. As I talked about, really, coming and bringing my full self and giving 150% in this role, although I'm not in the office, so the interactions specifically for me as a comm professional, there's a huge boundary there. And then on top of that, leading that DEI work as a person of color and the weight that carries, it has been something I've never experienced before, but to be a part of change within our organization when it's something that's happening societal is very huge. It's usually you're confined in the four walls of your office and your organization, but to work with the NBA and be a part of the social justice task force that we're doing, across the league with all 30 teams and initiatives that we're launching long-term and the NBA Foundation launch. I'm a change agent, in this time and in this space. And that's a huge responsibility and onus, but in the middle of being a new wife. Transparently.
When did you say a new wife? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we got married in December of 2019.
Ooh.
Right. We were planning for this year. Life happens, and we did December of 2019 with close family and friends. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you did it in 2019.
Yes, that was favor. Yes. So it has been multiple layers of really moving and starting a new job during this pandemic.
Wow. Do you have a team that works for you?
Yes, not a large team, but yes.
How are you keeping your team like thriving and like motivated to work through all of this?
It's interesting that you say that, because I challenge myself every day, and I'll even say as of late, even more of how I can be a better leader. It's a question I ask myself every day. And my answer varies in this current climate of disconnect, and mental health and wellness, is a large part of this. So I have personally challenged myself every day to be their biggest advocate, because the camaraderie of being in the office and the interaction does not exist right now. We meet over Zoom multiple times during the week, and all of it is just not, work conversations. I'm their advocate of, hey, do you need a mental wellness day? Just let me know. And we have transparent conversations about the current climate and racial injustice and what we're doing as an organization, and voting, and just creating that transparency has really helped. But I challenge myself daily, how can I be a better leader to my staff?
I mean, even just what you said, just having the multiple Zoom calls, checking in, making sure, do you need a mental health day? Just having the ability to see that, right? To see without somebody saying it.
Right.
My old boss was really good at that, because I kept it in, I internalized it. And so when I was junior in my career, and she was very good at noticing. So it's a sign of a good leader, I think, and just allowing them to just be transparent and have those conversations. Those are great, I think, tips just for anyone who's listening, who's either being managed by somebody and they don't like the way they're being managed during COVID and need some help on saying what they would like to see, or,
right.
leaders who are out there who have a team and aren't even sure what to do next, because this has been going on for much longer than we thought. Remember when it was March and we're like, oh, so like a couple of weeks, we have to stay home. No big deal.
We're going into month 6 of when I know it's September 1st. And I'm just like, no.
Yeah. No, it's been long. All right. And how are you keeping yourself thriving and during COVID and sane and a new wife?
Everything. First and foremost, connecting with my tribe. Like my girlfriends, my circle, like Zoom calls on the weekend while we're doing nothing, just talking to each other and catching up is so, so helpful. And, staying close with my family. I have 3 nephews and I have 2. The youngest ones are 8 and 10, and I get a FaceTime every day, although they're on the East Coast. And it doesn't matter what time Auntie gets up, they're up and moving around. And just really, having the support and bonding and spending time with my husband. We moved across country. We don't know anyone out here. We moved in the middle of a pandemic, and he's just so dope to up and move and leave his job to come with me and find something out here. But, that's huge, especially, first year marriage. So I think just really just taking the step back. As I mentioned, I'm a planner, so I had so much planned for 2020, as so many people did. And it's really allowed me to take that step back and just digest and spend that genuine time, with family and friends, and having conversations that, are uncomfortable but necessary during this time. So just kind of I've taken some step back and just say it's okay to not just drown myself in work, because I do, I am guilty of just drowning myself in work and how I deal with things. And I've been able to really just kind of step away and be okay with that, which is a process.
Yes, it takes a lot of internal reflection, internal dialogue, sometimes internal debate.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know about you. I feel better afterwards when I
do
step away, and the next day I'm like, oh, all right. I'm actually
It's okay.
better. I'm feeling better today, refreshed, and I actually have more ideas. So, okay, good.
And the work is still here.
Yes.
It'll be waiting on you.
Didn't go anywhere.
Nope.
So one thing I've been talking to every guest about is this racial awakening happening in our country, and the amount of people who feel compelled and moved to take action. Specifically women in sports. And I have a group that I meet with once a month, cocktails and conversation, and we talk about whatever. And the first few times we had it, all we talked about was this awakening that was happening. And obviously no one has the one right answer, right? But we were just, everyone was talking, and it was more like, my organization isn't doing anything. What should I do? Where should I start? You know, my organization's all about it, but I don't even know where to start. I'm like, this is uncomfortable. Like, it was just a very eye-opening conversation, especially for someone, a woman of color who's watching this go on. But with your title and your credentials and your expertise, I'd love to hear just your thoughts on where someone should start if they want to make change within their organization.
It may seem simple, but start having the conversations. Mm-hmm. Because I think for some organizations, and you saw it recently, they immediately reacted and put out statements, or they hired a diversity team. But you have to have the conversation internally, and they're uncomfortable conversations. And the more you do the work in this space, the more they become uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And identify the resources and tools that you can utilize internally in that support. Because you can put out a statement, but if you haven't done the work internally, it defeats the person, the purpose. For me, as a woman of color, and people feel differently, I feel a responsibility and commitment on myself that's different because of where I am within my organization, and because of my level of leadership. I have a responsibility to listen to our employees of color and hear their feedback and understand our influence and our platform. And you look at our players, you know, boycotting and not willing to play the game. Well, what do our male employees within the organization that are men of color, what's their platform and what's their resource, and how are we as an organization listening to them and providing them with support, but also us doing the work on behalf of them as their employer. So those are some steps internally we've taken with our platform and really stating our position. But as a woman of color, you know, I have a responsibility. Personally, I can't feel that the players can advocate on the court and then I don't have a responsibility off the court as well, from the business side and perspective, to do the same.
Uh-huh. So
did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. And, you know, it's so interesting, right? Because I ask everybody, just, you know, we have these women who are directors plus, right? And so every answer is different and unique. And that's why I keep asking the same question, because everyone has a unique perspective. And there is no wrong answer except not doing anything, right?
Right.
And no interview is going to say that. I believe it helps women who are listening understand that there's no one way to do this. Action is the right way, but there's no one way to do this. And listening to all these leaders like yourself in these positions of power and sharing what you're doing or what you think it should look like, I think helps give perspective. Yeah,
and it's different, to your point, it's different the markets are different. You have to think about, you know, Atlanta's going to be different from Portland. Absolutely. Oklahoma's city is going to be different. So you also have to consider what will work locally, boots on the ground for your community, but also reflect your organization.
Mm-hmm. Give us a little sneak peek behind the scenes of what you're doing, what sort of programs you're implementing to kind of help with everything that's going on right now.
Sure. So one of the first things, we are doing a financial investment in community-based nonprofit organizations that have been leading the racial justice work. So from a local level as well as a national level. In addition, we're amplifying in voices in our company and community that are leading the racial justice work. We're encouraging our fans and supporters to use their own voices for positive positive change in the community, which is led by myself and my team. Again, we've been doing our DEI work for the last 3+ years. So we have been committed to doing this work. Our work specifically is around racial injustice and police reform. And, we take serious responsibility, and we're leveraging our position, our platforms, our resources, and our influence to ensure that we create a safe and secure quality of life that everyone deserves. That's kind of what we're doing in our racial injustice space. In addition, we have launched our voting initiative, which is really leading our civic participation, which is a huge critical component of democracy. And, voting, is an opportunity for our fans to really use their voices to help determine the future of our community and our state and our country. So we have launched our initiative. I don't know if you saw some of our coaches had on our voting shirts. We've done work towards census and voting efforts, by partnering with nonpartisan nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And we joined the Rally the Vote coalition of professional sports teams. So when we all vote and Rise to Vote are two that we work with to educate staff and fans on voting with various channels. So that's our voting initiative, as well as our racial injustice initiative and fund, which will be ongoing. This is not just for the moment. This is, a full movement that will be a part of our DEI work moving forward.
Wow. Your employees must feel inspired.
They do. And that's over the last 4 months, we've really been able to just elevate the work that we had already done, which was great. But our employees are excited and empowered and on board, and they're seeing the action. During our elimination game, we put out tweets of petitions for lives that have been lost due to racial injustice. And so our employees and even our fan base, just our level of commitment, it's beyond basketball. It's so far beyond basketball. And we will just continue to use our platform and resources to create awareness and do the work.
I think you just came up with the title for this episode, Beyond Basketball.
Like it.
That's a good one. This is good. Okay. So one last question I always like to ask. You have had an amazing career, and obviously it's not even close to over, but you've had an amazing career. So if you had to go back and do one thing over, what would it be?
I would have used my voice more earlier in my career. I think sometimes as women, and we hear it, there's an opportunity, and there were instances where I had a seat at the table and I didn't understand why I was at the table, or I didn't advocate for myself the way that I should have, and let some experiences. And, I think across the board, just professionally, there's a wide range of reflection for me that if I would have gone back and just had some conversations with my younger self. But I think that's a part of just learning and living, as well. But those are two things.
Mm-hmm. I bet you a lot of people can relate to that. As soon as you said it, I was like, that's mine. That's exactly how I feel. It's like,
it is.
I went back and used my voice, but I don't know about you now. And, when I was with, later teams at the director level, I made sure to use my voice. Mm-hmm. And then if I slipped back into that place where I didn't, I was kicking myself in the butt. Like you become so aware of it, and right. You work so hard on it to develop that muscle, because it isn't easy for everybody. I don't know about you. I'm an introvert, so it's different for me. And there's a lot of preparation that has to go into using my voice.
It is. And I'm also a strong believer in, you don't have to talk just to talk. And that's coming from a communications professional. So it's also identifying those moments when to use your voice and not just jumping into talk to talk. And even now, I don't always want to be the person to talk about DEI. I don't, and I shouldn't have to be. So even in those moments, understanding why I'm there, but letting someone else begin those conversations, which is important. But the other, I would say, advocating for myself. Mm-hmm. It's so important.
Yes. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh gosh, that was fast.
It goes by really fast. If someone wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn under Ashley, Ashley Clinkscale, Clinkscale. I'll be listed under Portland Trailblazers.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. We all appreciate it.
You're welcome. This was great. I appreciated the conversation. I look forward to further conversations with you.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.